Good morning and welcome to this morning's debate in collaboration between C40 and BLOXHUB, a morning debate on green buildings and green jobs. My name is Torben Klitgaard and I'm the CEO here in BLOXHUB, and we're streaming live from downtown Copenhagen in Denmark this morning. For those of you who don't exactly know what BLOXHUB is, just allow me to give you a little bit of overview of what is really going on in downtown Copenhagen in BLOXHUB. Many people come to me and say, what is BLOXHUB really all about? And to cut it very, very short, BLOXHUB is about three things. Now, first and foremost, BLOXHUB is a co-working hub in downtown Copenhagen. We have roughly 700 people coming every day, going in, going out, having their offices here in BLOXHUB. And one funny little aspect I thought I would mention here from the morning on, we actually experienced in 2020. We just got the annual report yesterday, and we actually experienced in 2020 that we had the best year ever. During the corona crisis, in the midst of one of the worst pandemic crises the world's ever seen, we actually saw a rise in the number of companies coming to live together in BLOXHUB. We raised our occupancy rate from 85% to 95%, and that really contradicts a lot of the tendencies and prognosis out there of co-working as a dead dog. We can truly say and truly really mean that people are coming together in order to co-work, in order to innovate and build up new solutions to benefit the work, to benefit the cities, and to co-create new solutions for the future. So BLOXHUB is first and foremost a co-working hub. Secondly, it's a community of companies, stakeholders from public and private enterprises, international companies, Nordic companies, startups, corporates, small and medium-sized companies, all coming together with the mission aligner of creating better cities for the future. And thirdly, BLOXHUB is a convening platform. It's a matchmaking platform where we try with a variety of programs to matchmake the companies that make up the community as good as possible. And especially our collaboration with the C40 team here in Copenhagen is tremendous. And therefore, I'm very proud to present to you this morning a fantastic team of panelists due to the collaboration that we have going on an everyday basis with a team situated here in Copenhagen, the C40 team situated here in Copenhagen. This spring, we're hosting a series of events focusing on cities and new solutions and climate action in the midst of one of the worst pandemics the world's ever seen. Throughout these series, we will hear how cities are solving the problems, what the post-pandemic thoughts and reflections are around the world, and we are mixing up cities, organization, and businesses. And today we have the pleasure and the opportunity to learn more about what's going on in Oslo and Sydney and Seoul, and how those cities have taken action to build back better on the backdrop of the pandemic crisis going on the global scale. And we're going to listen to the new strategies of VLOOKs and the Building and Woodworkers International and listen and learn how they put forward their actions in order to combat the post-pandemic crisis. So I'm very much looking forward to a fantastic debate this morning. I welcome you all and hope we'll have a great morning together, and thereby handing over the stage to my moderator, the co-host of this morning, Simon Hansen, the C40's Managing Director for Climate Solutions and Networks, situated and located here in downtown Copenhagen. So welcome all and have a great morning together with the panelists and together with Simon Hansen. Simon, over to you. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Torben, also for that positive message that co-working and co-creation is still alive, even during a pandemic. And thank you for the introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone also listening from behind your screens. As Torben said, my name is Simon Hansen. I am the Managing Director for Climate Solutions and Networks in C40. And if some of you are not familiar with C40, we are a global network of 97 cities that are working collaboratively to tackle the climate crisis. I think it's fair to say that the theme we'll be touching on today is really in many ways one of the most pressing themes. It's about COVID-19? How can we come back following COVID-19? How can we ensure that urban economies, urban jobs, urban equity will improve following COVID-19? But also, how can we make sure that as we build back following COVID-19, we do it in a way where we can also effectively address the climate crisis, bring down emissions, and build resilience against the impacts that we see during this climate crisis. And in today's panel, we will focus on one particular aspect of this admittedly very broad theme. We will focus on buildings. And that's because buildings is, in most C40 cities, the sector where we find the biggest source of emissions. But there's also another reason. We all know that cities are growing enormously. And our projections show that with the expected growth in cities, we will need to develop new constructions to the equivalent of developing a new Manhattan once a month. So clearly, we cannot win the battle against climate change if we are not addressing buildings and making them greener. But there's another reason we are focusing on buildings, and that has everything to do with jobs. We've made an analysis in C40 showing that in investing in green jobs, the building sector is by far the sector where you can find the biggest and quickest benefits. So in short, how do we make buildings greener? And how do we make sure that also, while pursuing strategies to make buildings greener, we develop more jobs, better jobs, more decent jobs? That is what we're going to discuss today. And I'm extremely proud and happy that we have this distinguished panel with us today. We have Monica Barone, who is the CEO in the city of Sydney. We also have Ingrid Reumert, who is the Vice President for Global External Relations and Sustainability at VLOOK. We have Ambed Yusan, the General Secretary of the Building and Woodworkers International. And we have Eli Grimsby, who is the CEO of Oslo Byg at the city of Oslo. So I welcome our panel. And I also welcome again all of you behind the screens. Please note that if you log into YouTube, you can give comments, you can make questions, you can make remarks. And while we might not be able to address all of those during this event, we will follow up afterwards, we will share it with our panelists, and we will make sure that it's part of the reflections and discussions that we'll be having. But now to my first question. And Monica Barone, I'd like to start by addressing you. The city of Sydney has a number of building energy efficiency programs. For example, you have a tune-up program for commercial buildings. You also provide finance support for energy efficiency measures. And I would like to know, based on this experience, what do you see and what, in your experience, have been some of the key barriers, but also the key opportunities in improving energy efficiency in the building stock that you have in your great city?
Thank you, Simon, and it's a great honour really to present today to this wonderful and be on this wonderful panel. And of course, you know, I've been to Copenhagen many times, and it's truly a wonderful city, and I wish I was there with you again. So I think, just to answer your question, I think probably the greatest barrier is the creating of a business case to persuade people that building green buildings that might cost a little more in the beginning is absolutely worth it, or even more importantly, retrofitting existing buildings to make them greener. So creating a business case is definitely the biggest challenge that we have. But the opportunity, and this is something that we've really learned through the different programs that we run, is that the opportunity provides a great platform for people to collaborate, to learn and build capacity in this space. And really importantly at this time, it provides an opportunity, to create a sense of purpose and commitment to your city by joining the sorts of programs that we offer. And I'll just give you some examples to make that case. We have a number of programs, and I'm just going to speak about three really quickly. One of the most significant is the one that's called the Better Buildings Partnership. It was launched in 2011. 59% of all the commercial office space in the Sydney's Central Business District are members of that Better Buildings Partnership. And since 2011, when they joined to collaborate, they've reduced their annual emissions by 61% from a 2006 baseline. They've reduced their water by 39% based on the 2006 baseline. Another significant program is our Smart Green Apartments. And this is a program where we actually work with the residents that live in multi-unit dwellings, you know, blocks of flats. And 75% of people in the inner city live in flats. And we work with whole large, you know, strata communities to support those communities to retrofit their buildings in order to make them more efficient. Do things like installing solar panels or water recycling systems and those kinds of things. And to date, we've worked with 24,000 residents directly. And the final one I want to mention is our Sustainable Destination Partnership, and that's all of the businesses that make up the tourism sector. And they, it represents 61% of all the hotel rooms in the city and 17% of all the entertainment venues, the theatres, the convention centre and those kinds of places. And they've managed to reduce their emissions now by 19% from a 2018 baseline, and their water by 21%. By working together, they've learnt to do this together. They've learnt from each other. Of course, there's some healthy competition. We run awards and all sorts of things in order to encourage the collaboration that leads to these kinds of results. And collectively, we then are able to demonstrate those business cases to others. But I think the main opportunity is that it educates people on the value of doing this. It creates a great sense of purpose and commitment to the city, and it really builds a great sense of community. I will speak later about the program we're now developing, which is about mandating some of these green initiatives, but I'll leave it there for now, Simon.
Great, thank you so much, Monica. And you talked about developing a strong business case. It does sound like, with the effects that you've seen in Sydney, that there are many good reasons for doing that. And I think also that leads me actually as a good segue to the next panelist I'd like to hear from, turning to Ingrid Reumert from VLOOK. VLOOK has quite recently announced a very ambitious target to be lifetime carbon neutral, and also to become carbon neutral in your operations by 2030. So I'd like to learn a little bit more about this concept. What does it mean to be lifetime carbon neutral? But also, what are some of the key actions that, as a leading business in the building sector, you're taking to achieve this ambition?
All right, great. Thank you very much for the invitation here, and good to see you, Simon, even if it's virtual. Yes, I will be happy to share a few thoughts that what are behind, or the thoughts we've had while making our lifetime carbon neutral commitment. And for those of you who don't know, VLOOK is a company within the building sector. So we are a world-leading manufacturer of roof windows and based here outside Copenhagen. But we've decided to become lifetime carbon neutral by 2041, and this is a new concept where we take responsibility both for our past, so our historical carbon emissions since we were founded in 1941, but also, of course, our future carbon emission, aligning ourselves to the 1.5 degree scenario. So if I should elaborate a bit around that, we sat down and calculated how much CO2 have we emitted as a producer of roof windows, creating jobs and growth, etc. since 1941. It's around 4.3 million tons CO2. We've added a buffer on top, and it takes it up to these 5.6 million tons CO2. Then we've entered into a partnership with the World Wildlife Foundation, and we'll work together with them in a 20-year long program to recapture our historical carbon debt through nature-based solutions, which means the forest preservation and forest restoration in several developing countries. So that is the historical part. But what is maybe even more important for this dialogue that we will have here today is the future commitment that we have made, because that's of course where you see the systems change and also the change in the building industry and the built environment that we need in order to achieve the Paris Agreement. So we have aligned ourselves moving forward with the Science Based Targets Initiative, the 1.5 degree scenario, which means that we as a company will become fully carbon neutral in 2030, but also what is interesting is that we will work very structured with our value chain. And we will reduce 50% CO2 from our value chain. And if you are a Windows manufacturer like we are, that means working a lot with glass producers, so the suppliers that we have of glass, and also of course of aluminium, which are, as you know, quite energy intensive industries. So putting the past and the present together, it will take us to 2041 at our 100 years anniversary, where we will be lifetime carbon neutral as a company. And the reason why this is important is of course the change that we are doing in VLOOK, but more importantly is of course the sectoral change that we hope that we can spur and maybe in some way be a catalyst for and start. And we all know that in order to reach at the COP26 with an ambitious agenda, we need to start working on the sectoral roadmaps. And we also need to start working with the sectoral tipping points, as you may know, is being discussed. And there we definitely need to work with the systems change, both within the built environment, but also very much within the whole value chain of the building industry. So working in the value chain and working with the product in itself is definitely a catalyst for change. So I think I will leave it there as an introduction. I think a much more can be said. And also, of course, we try to link our initiatives also to a strong advocacy platform, really engaging with the governments and with the policymakers. And luckily, there's a lot of change happening both in the markets, but definitely also at EU level that we could maybe touch upon. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Ingrid. And I think you gave a very powerful example of what it means to work with science-based targets. So not stopping at what is possible, but really understanding what is necessary and what is the responsible for a company like VLOOK, looking back at the entire lifetime of the company. Very, very inspiring to hear. And Yusen, the Building and Woodworkers International, you promote the development of trade unions in the construction sector. And of course, you also enforce workers' rights and do this in the context of sustainable development. I would like to hear from you also, what do you see as some of the main barriers? What do you see as some of the main opportunities to not just create more, better, and more decent jobs within the built environment, but also to ensure that we bring down emissions and prepare for the climate crisis while doing all of that?
Thank you, Simon, and greetings to my fellow panelists. BWI, we are a global trade union which represent about 2 million members around the world. BWI shares C40's agenda for a green and just recovery. We need to take care of the environment. At the same time, we also need to provide decent job for workers, and this will bring economic and sustainable recovery. Simon, we believe that we are promoting sustainable construction. It means construction not only taking care of the economic aspect, but as well as the environmental aspect and the social and labor aspect. I would say that the major barriers is, construction, probably not in Denmark, no? it's an exceptional industry in Denmark. But around the world, construction work is seen as, 3Ds, no? Dirty, dangerous, and difficult. And there are a lot of layers of subcontracting, uh, informality, workers are unskilled, temporary, and working conditions are safe. This is how you would characterize the industry. And for me, we have the opportunity to transform the construction industry. Study shows that up to 87 million jobs will be created through retrofitting, through green infrastructure, renovation. In short, we need to transform the 3Ds to, I call it 3S, jobs that are safe, secure, and skilled. What do I mean by that? We need construction, green construction jobs should mean stable jobs with decent wage and benefits to be able to raise a decent family. Green jobs should provide greater opportunity for upskilling and vocational training for construction worker, especially I think for the young people, and the women as well. And lastly, green jobs should be seen as safe job. Especially now with the COVID-19, we see the importance of safety and health and protecting the workers on the site is really important. Renovation, for example, represent 55% of the construction activity within the infrastructure stimulus packages. A safe procedure on to handle dangerous substance like asbestos needs to be included in the preparation work for such intervention. This is where the trade unions can provide a large knowledge base to ensure that construction industry became a safer workplace for its workers. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Ambit. I must say, I think that was a very clear way to explain how to move away from the 3Ds of dirty, dangerous, and difficult to the 3Ss of safe, stable, and skilled. I think that was extremely helpful. I now turn to you, Eli Grimsby, because Oslo within C40 is definitely a leader when it comes to clean construction. And one of the things that you've worked with in Oslo is how to develop construction sites within cities that are zero-emission construction sites, where, for example, you use only electrified construction equipment. And obviously, for those who are working in such sites, it also brings benefits. But for everyone who lives in a city, that, of course, brings enormous benefits. So could you tell us a bit about how this came about in Oslo? What are some of the actions that you took to start this important work, but also looking more into the future, what are the actions that you will be taking to continue in this direction of clean construction?
Well, thank you, first of all, for the chance to be here. It's really inspiring to listen to all of you and on some so important topics, really every one of you. So thank you. But I would like to go back just a few years. Oslo was this city with ambitious goals for fighting climate change and creating a cleaner, greener, and better society, but with far too slow speed of change. However, as you mentioned, this has changed significantly during quite a short time. And I would like to share some of my perspectives today on how Oslo actually has become more of a game changer and taking a leading role in the green shift in Norway and in some areas, as you said, even globally. And for me, critical success factors include strong political ambitions and leadership, courage to set demanding specification and requirements, collaboration, as from Sydney, across functions, sectors, and interests, and last but not least, innovative and brave employees in our companies and organization. The goal set by Oslo's politician is a reduction in greenhouse gas emissions of 95% by 2030. And this goal certainly makes Oslo one of the world's most ambitious capitals, which is inspiring and serve as a motivation to act. For me, it all starts with political ambitions. And with this green political ambition as a backdoor, it was a short leap for a creative and ambitious organization to take on the challenge of establishing the municipality's first fossil-free construction project, and later on in 2019, the first zero-emission urban construction site. But it all started back in 2016 with just three sentences that made a difference. In the spring of 2016, the construction of a multipurpose hall was put out to tender with specification for fossil-free construction. The time was right. We took a chance, but we kept it simple. And what did we really have to lose by trying? The worst thing that could have happened was to do slightly better than we would have done without trying at all. But were we excited? Yes. The response of the market was unknown, but the approach proved to be successful. We received 8 tenders where all of the contractors met the specifications, and none of them imposed any reservation. No fossil fuels were used at all. So in less than 3 years, the city of Oslo has gone from having no requirements from environmentally friendly construction traffic on our construction sites to only permitting fossil-free or emission-free construction sites from 2019. And I know this has even inspired megacities all over the world, this little local project. But the City of Oslo is one of Norway's largest construction clients. And as a large public procurement body, we can contribute to new services and products both by setting requirements, but also by entering into a dialogue with the supplier market. And as a municipal authority, we definitely see the importance of a dialogue with the market. So feedback from the suppliers and contractors indicate that predictability and common requirements are key. We make progress by setting common specifications and award criteria in all activities in the City of Oslo to encourage market change and innovation. So I think that to reach the ambitions set for 2030, we can only succeed through a close cooperation between residents, industry, organizations, the state, and the municipality. And finally, I would like to mention that we are observing something very interesting. There are always some early movers in an organization, and we have them in the City of Oslo as well. They might be willing to experiment, to go with that data and implement something new based on simplicity and the fail fast, learn and move on design principles. So this is truly a game changer. So I would like just to sum it up for now, to remember political ambitions must be in place. Exploit opportunities while possible. Use your purchasing power. Collaborate, share and learn from each other and spread the word. And maybe most of all, keep it simple. So yeah, for now, thank you.
No, thank you so much, Eli, for that, I think, very clear recipe for how you can create a shift in the market and which, as I understood your comments, starts with the political ambition, and then you can see that the market responds. That was extremely helpful, thank you. And Monica, I would like to come back to Sydney and come back to you. When thinking about COVID-19 and what hopefully soon can be a phase of COVID-19 recovery, not just in Sydney, but in all cities across the C40 network. I would like to ask you, what do you feel are some of the most important actions a city can take to ensure that we get a recovery that creates better jobs and greener jobs? And of course, based also on the experience you have from Sydney.
Thank you. So I think that, as I said earlier, one of the challenges, of course, especially in a sort of financially constrained environment, which is, of course, what we're all facing now as a consequence of COVID, is continuing to excite people and promote the idea that there really is a benefit in building green, in retrofitting, that really there's value not just in the jobs that it creates, but then in having a better city and a more efficient city. And so many of the things that I spoke about earlier still stand. The fact that we've worked for over a decade with our community to build that commitment to a green built environment is really holding us in good stead now, because we're able to use the evidence that we've gathered and the relationships that we've built to try to now accelerate some of this activity in the interest of COVID recovery as well as environmental action. So I'm just going to talk about one of the things that we're doing now. One of the things that listeners may not know is that obviously, one of the wonderful things about being part of C40 is that you learn that cities have all sorts of different governance arrangements. And in Australia, a city or a local government cannot mandate a planning policy unless the state government agrees to that. And we have worked very hard over the years to be able to mandate some of the things that many others take for granted and that we think are just common sense. And we've had to really do it by working. That's one of the other reasons we've had to have such a close relationship with the business community and the residential community, because we've needed them to take that case to government and to say, this isn't so terrible, this can work. We've seen it, we've done it, we've seen that it's financially a good idea and it's the right thing to do. And because of that, those relationships and the work, the projects that I mentioned before, we now do have this community that is committed to this to help us to advance the next stage. And the next stage that we're working on now is to try to embed in the planning system our net zero buildings plan, which is to absolutely mandate that there's a pathway to get our buildings, any new build, to be net zero. So I think that to answer your question, we've COVID has given us a burning platform where we've needed to really find ways to make the case for keeping people working and creating opportunities, and we've been able to use what we've done in the past through our very close relationship with C40 to use that information to make the case that the recovery needs to be grounded in those lessons, not retreating to what we think is easy, but we know is not actually easier and is actually the wrong way to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. So no business as usual, taking this also as an opportunity to develop and create progress together with the community. Ingrid, VLOOK and C40 in partnership have developed a program and delivered a program, Women for Climate Tech Challenge, which encourages young female entrepreneurs to develop the new solutions, the more innovative solutions to tackle the climate crisis. And since you've been so involved in this, I'd like to ask you, what are some of the key innovations that you have picked out of that process and that have really made an impression on you? But also, what do you see is needed in order to make sure that the building sector, which I think it's fair to say can be somewhat male-dominated, so what in your experience is important to do to make sure that it's gender inclusive?
Yeah, thank you very much, Simon, for that question. And it truly has been a successful partnership that we've been very pleased with around the Women for Climate Tech Challenge together with UNC40. And the reason why we entered into this partnership in VLOOK is very simple. In order to solve the climate challenge, we need all talent on board, regardless of gender. So in that sense, it's very simple. And I think one key learning that we took, or that I took also personally, was the extent to which the participants, the different female innovators, were focusing on the link between climate solutions and health. And I think that's it's a learning that has become even more important now here during the COVID pandemic, the importance of buildings and the built environment for our health. So quite a few of the female innovators had solutions focusing on the indoor climate, linking to the outdoor climate, etc. But really trying to raise awareness and gather data, etc., to enable better decision making around the health aspects of buildings, which are, you could say, often forgotten or maybe seen as a second or third or fourth priority after energy efficiency, focusing on CO2, etc. And maybe just to take one of the contestants or that I was particularly impressed with was called Clarity, which is a smart, low-cost air quality monitoring unit that can be used both indoors and outdoors, and creates this kind of real-time data for policymakers and others to make decisions around indoor and outdoor air quality. And we know spending time indoors is up to 90% of our time, which is spent indoors. And we know a better indoor environment, it just creates better health, well-being, productivity, etc. So I think that came through very clearly. And I think, as I said, that the pandemic here has increased our focus on the importance of health, and maybe also moving forward that we will see more and more people working from home. So we need to make sure that the home office spaces are also conducive to productivity, health and well-being, and maybe also more suburbanization, less urbanization. Maybe there will be a shift there also. So we'll have to look at the built environment also with the health aspect in mind.
Thank you so much, Ingrid. And I think that is really important to bring health into the conversation. It definitely touches upon my experience of working from home every day and really experiencing my home in a completely new way. Ambit, I'd like to ask you the next question. So in C40, we have an ambition, and the C40 mayors, led by our chair, Mayor Garcetti of Los Angeles, have developed a vision of a global Green New Deal, which is really a coalition of a number of partners, cities, of course, but also labor, business, other civil society groups, youth movements. And the idea is to promote an agenda of a green and just transition. So looking at both the climate crisis, but also how to improve equity and create opportunities for everyone as cities are addressing the climate crisis. And I would like to hear your thoughts on such a broad coalition. How do you see that could work? Could that potentially contribute to a just transition, but also to improved conditions for workers?
You know, Simon, transformation of the industry and the society would actually, there will be winners and losers, and I think there will be jobs, which will be gone. No, so workers will lose some jobs, but I think we should look at it that we can create also new jobs. So BWI believes that indeed, no, trade union believes that we need to have this broader coalition and address the issue more strategically towards a just transition. So we believe that I think the first one is we need a partnership for a sustainable construction. Of course, we would like to work with the industry, with Monica, Ingrid, Ellie, to address how we can formulate a just transition. So there will be jobs who will be lost, but we can create new and better jobs. Cities and business sector in cooperation with trade union can play an important role in facilitating just transition. So you would have to address some employment support program, access to comprehensive social protection, green apprenticeship to prepare young people for jobs in renewable energy, home insulation. So these are transition, that we need to help them, shepherd them. But at the same time, you create new jobs. and new jobs requires new skills, no? So without investment in skills development, we see there is a risk that local unskilled workers will lose out on the green shift. The economy requires new skills. This is an opportunity to train and retrain and upgrade skills of construction workers. And of course, well, I am also quite impressed with the initiative of Ingrid's organization, because we believe that this is an opportunity to attract women and young workers to enter into the construction industry, because young people don't want to go to the construction industry, and the construction industry is dominated by male. But I think we can bring them in, and with these new jobs, and then with the skills training, I think we will be able to bring them. The second part is we are quite excited actually on working with the C40 on climate, on the clean construction. The cities are important clients. The construction industry would be able to transform and follow. The cities are the clients. If the clients requires, we need green, we need retrofitting, we need renovation, the industry will follow. I think this is very important. That's why BWI will soon be formalizing our support and cooperation to the C40's Clean Construction Declaration. I think this is a very good initiative. As a trade union, worldwide, we work with governments, to engage in improving the industry. But we think that working with the cities will even have a greater impact for the workers, for the environment, and for the communities.
Thank you so much for that, Ambit. And I must say that in C40, we are extremely excited and thrilled to have this partnership also with the Building and Woodworkers International. And you said cities are the clients, and I think that's you, Eli, representing Oslo BLOOK in one of the C40 cities of Oslo. And we talked before about clean construction, and Ambit mentioned also the Clean Construction Declaration. One of the aspects of that declaration is also a target to look at the embodied emissions in the building materials. So not just considering if a building is green and sustainable after it has been constructed, and if, for example, it saves energy, but also considering the emissions that went into the process of developing the building in the first place. So, Eli, I'd like to ask you, what are these ambitions of Oslo around clean construction and embedded emissions in building materials? How can those ambitions potentially inspire other cities across the C40 network to follow similar strategies?
I would like to mention that, and I find all these topics so inspiring, and listening to you, I would like to welcome you all to Oslo. I believe we can continue this conversation. But the public sector in Norway as a whole purchases goods and services worth around 500 billion Norwegian kroner per year, like 50 billion euro per year, and therefore accounts for a significant proportion of the total demand for goods and services in Norway. And substantial environmental gains can be made if the public sector is able to use its purchasing power wisely. And the city of Oslo alone builds and develops, operates and maintains a portfolio of 3.5 million square meters, and will spend 40 billion Norwegian kroner, 4 billion euro, the next 4 years on new buildings, including renovation. So that makes the city of Oslo one of Norway's largest construction clients. And this volume has the scale to drive the green shift in Oslo as well as in Norway, actually. And through working with other cities, as we have been talking about, and private construction clients and state-owned construction enterprises, I see a huge potential to accelerate the delivery of climate-friendly building and construction projects, both faster and to a higher standard. And I believe that a larger market will help cutting costs and make it easier reaching our goals. And I do believe that we make progress only by setting common specifications and award criteria across all activities to encourage market change and innovation. So once again, to reach the ambitions, we can only succeed through a close cooperation between residents, industry, organizations, the state, and the municipality. And I believe this panel has showed us good reasons to continue collaboration. And on the international stage, Oslo is participating, as you know, in several city networks like C40. And through these networks, Oslo is aiming to put emission-free building and construction sites on the agenda, but while we on the same time are seeking knowledge and cooperation in other areas where we can learn from our friends in other cities. So cooperation with other cities is vital in our efforts to reinforce purchasing power, and therefore I encourage suppliers to strive for green jobs and low emission solutions. Thank you.
Well, wonderful. Thank you very much, Eli. And in C40, we certainly agree with that statement that collaboration across cities is vital. We do have time for one final question, but only if you are able to answer it in half a minute. But it is a very simple question, so I think we can do it. I would like to ask each of you the same question. If you were to give all or one of your co-panelists one piece of advice that, based on your experience, you find is particularly important, what would that be? And I start with you again, Monica, because I'm sure you can do this in half a minute.
Okay, well, I'm very reluctant to give advice to such an eminent panel, but I will just give one thought. I mean, of course, we've all spoken about the need for collaboration and the shared purpose that comes from collaboration. So, of course, all of our programs are designed around bringing people together to work together, to solve problems together, and to make that commitment together. And the final thing I'll say is that what it also leads to is co-benefits. So, for example, that program we do with strata communities, people who live in apartments, obviously we're working with all of those residents in the apartments, and yes, they're making their buildings more efficient and they're saving money as a consequence of that work, but they're also getting to meet each other. They're getting to do other things together that creates a sense of community and commitment to each other, and that builds resilience within the city. So there are many benefits that come from doing this, and by working in a collaborative way, in a co-designed way, we can achieve many of those things.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Monica. Ingrid, do you have advice you want to share?
Yeah, thank you very much. I feel a bit like Monica, difficult to give advice to such a distinguished panel of speakers, but I would echo firstly what Monica said about focusing at the multiple benefits when making the business case for retrofitting or building new buildings. So both the energy efficiency, the health aspects, etc., the body carbon, etc. So really looking at buildings in the life cycle perspective, I think is what will get us there. And maybe just one thought, I think, for the young people, also those who might be listening here, what is great about working in the building sector and will be fantastic moving forward is that the big transition is still to come. So to compare to a lot of other sectors, we have really interesting innovation and big structural change ahead of us. And I think it's just fantastic to be able to join a sector where you as a young person can be able to shape that moving forward.
Thank you very much, Ingrid, for your statement. Ambit, turning to you now.
It's difficult to give an advice, but maybe just something for my co-panelists, or to the city of Oslo and city of Sydney to think about. I think, the young workers, the youth, and the women were left out during the COVID pandemic, So I think when we talk about recovery, when we talk about green recovery, it is important that they are in the forefront of agenda. I think it would be good to look at the possibility of supporting greater participation of women in the construction industry and young workers in the construction industry by really playing a role in skills and vocational training. To bring them, the women and the young people will give a lot of energy to the industry and to our objective of transforming to a greener industry. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ambit. And it seems very clear that you're all focusing on the young people and the future generations. Eli, I want to give you a chance also to give us a final, very short statement or piece of advice.
I would also like to focus on the people, our employers, because I believe that's the key. That's the key to create green jobs and greener buildings. And I believe that by allowing our own heroes, the early movers and lead users to experiment, I believe it's more likely that we find practical solutions that are more resource efficient, more circular and more sustainable, and in all phases of the life cycle of our buildings and infrastructure. And then when we have the promising practical solutions in place, invented by our heroes, our employees, but still only prototypes, it's time for others to scale these prototypes and create a cleaner, greener, and better society. So that is my, maybe not advice, but reflection on how to create green jobs and greener buildings. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that reflection also. And I just want to thank all four of you for having given us such great and really thought-provoking, inspiring thoughts on this admittedly very big theme. I don't want to pick out anything in particular. There's been so many good and interesting things that have come out of this conversation. But the good thing is that we will also share it at the C40 Knowledge Hub so others can come back and dig into the details of all the great things that you've shared with us. But thank you so much, all four of you. Thank you, Monica, Ingrid, Ambit, and Eli. And now I want to turn to another great C40 city. I want to turn to the city of Seoul. And that's because Seoul is the city that in many ways has inspired this event. Seoul is a city in which buildings account for more than 60% of emissions. And therefore, Seoul has put in place ambitious programs to ensure building retrofits, focusing on their municipal building stocks. But what Seoul has also realized in that process is that by doing that, they can create 20,000 green jobs in this sector alone from now and until 2022. So to learn a bit more about that, I'm happy to bring a message from the Director General of the City of Seoul, A-sik, and he will share examples of the leadership of Seoul in the green buildings area.
Hello, I am A-sik, Director General for Environment and Energy of the Seoul Metropolitan Government. I'm glad to share with you today how we in Seoul is seeking to create green jobs with our green building policies on behalf of Acting Mayor Seo Jung-hyun. Last year, Seoul joined the C40 Global Mayors COVID-19 Recovery Task Force. And along with the C40 mayors, we jointly launched the Agenda for a Green and Just Recovery. Seoul Mayor had shared at the TF meetings how he was going to aggressively tackle building emissions that are responsible for 69% of Seoul's greenhouse gas emissions and create 20,000 jobs by 2022. Today, let me share with you some of the key green building policies that we are working on. In July last year, we announced the Seoul Green New Deal, which is our strategy to reach carbon neutrality by 2050. We have prioritized cutting emissions from buildings, transport, and waste that release about 95% of GHG emissions in Seoul. We are going to invest $2.3 billion into these measures by 2022 to accelerate our efforts towards the 2050 net zero emissions. Since buildings account for 69% of Seoul's emissions, cutting building emissions is crucial, but also challenging. Total floor area of a building keeps growing, and 44% of buildings in Seoul are old, over 30 years old. First of all, we are going to expand the green remodeling of old public buildings to a total of 1,532 buildings by 2050. 156 old municipal buildings are already being remodeled this year. The building's energy efficiency will be improved to the ZEB level to reduce their energy consumption and cut GHG emissions. We have required new municipal buildings with a total floor area of more than 1,000 square meters to meet the zero energy building standard. While for municipal buildings with a gross floor area of over 500 square meters, we are going to require GEB from this year, 2 years earlier than the timeline of the national government. As for private buildings, we are aiming to mandate GEB on buildings with a gross floor area of over 100,000 square meters from 2023, and on buildings with a total floor area of more than 10,000 square meters from 2024, a couple of years earlier than the central government's plan. We are currently piloting GHG emissions cap for 51 of public buildings with a gross floor area of over 1,000 square meters. We are going to change legislation to expand the cap to private buildings. In addition, zero interest loans for private building retrofit will be provided starting from this month, while our home improvement program is providing financial support that could cover partial costs of green repairs of all the houses. Last but not least, we are trying to change laws to require submission of energy performance assessment reports when trading properties in order for energy efficient buildings to be valued. If we successfully implement our policies as intended, about 80% of GHG emissions from buildings are expected to be reduced by 2050. Our economies are still struggling due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Since building retrofits and new energy efficient construction are known as by far the biggest job creating actions cities can take, we hope that our efforts in this will not only create jobs, but also improve living conditions of vulnerable populations, and thereby improving social equity. Thank you.
Well, and a huge thank you to the Director General for sharing this fantastic experience from Seoul. A huge thank you again to our panelists, and also a big thank you to all of you who have been watching. I hope you have found this just as illuminating and exciting as I have. We will have another 2 debates coming up in this series. We will have a meeting in May, which will focus on water-safe cities. We will also have a meeting in June, which will focus on this new and very exciting concept of the 15-minute cities and health in cities that many C40 cities are now focusing on in their strategies for urban planning. So please stay tuned and join us for the forthcoming debates. But once again, thank you for today, and I hope you've enjoyed this.